This is one of those things that people don't like to think about. Nobody thinks about what's going to happen to me or my family if I get sick, if I need someone to come into the house to take care of me, if I need a nursing home. People don't spend any time thinking about that because they'd rather think about where am I going to go on vacation next week.
Mr. Kestenbaum, thank you for joining me here on Mind Your Business.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for having me here this morning.
It's an honor, a treat. You're a professional. You understand the ins and outs of what goes on. Many listeners in the audience are perhaps at a certain age bracket that they really should be considering a trust. Maybe you can explain even the basics of how it works and why it's so important for people to really take it seriously before it's too late.
Absolutely. So most people are familiar with basic estate planning. Every person needs a will which discusses what happens to their assets upon their passing. A lot of people need trusts as well for various purposes. Firstly, to protect assets. Secondly, to deal with future estate taxes. Thirdly, to provide various other services for their children, for their grandchildren. A trust is really, I call it almost a unicorn. It's a mythical being because nobody owns a trust. The concept of a trust is there's a trustee who has legal title but doesn't actually own the assets in the trust. And then you have beneficiaries, which are people who are permitted to benefit from the trust. And trust serve a multitude of purposes. A lot of clients even say to me, well, why is this allowed? Why are these trust things that are almost magical beings? Why are they allowed? And trusts really go back to ancient feudal system in England. And really these creatures have been around for over 500 years. They exist in some form in almost every country. But it really doesn't make kind of sense how a trust can own an asset when there's no individual behind it. Just different individuals play different roles.
Almost like a cloud.
It's almost like a cloud, and that's one of the reasons why it offers so much protection from all different types of issues, again, like taxes, specifically estate taxes, and also from various creditors. Now, UCS is a different type of trust known as a pooled income trust, which is basically a lot of people, thousands of people are contributing their assets to one trust. And the reason why these people are contributing their assets, because if they don't contribute their assets, ultimately the government will use these assets for their care, for nursing homes, for home health care. And without the concept and the ability of people to contribute their assets to UCS, the government is going to take it anyway for their care. When the assets go into the trust, people can actually utilize those assets in the trust for their basic needs. And UCS, again, runs a very wonderful and professional organization managing and taking care of those assets and making sure they're only used for proper purposes and really to protect the individual's money and resources, that it's used in the proper way and the way they want.
Mr. Rothschild, thank you for being with me here on Mind Your Business.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay, here's an important question. When creating an estate plan, how can someone ensure that that they're properly protecting all their assets?
Good question, because there are just too many people who, including lawyers, frankly, that draft wills in a very simplistic fashion, leaving everything to their children outright or to their spouse outright. And what that does is put it all at risk of creditors and divorce and potential litigation in the future. I'll give you one horror story that I've
had.
And
it's important, so it brings it home for the listeners.
A number of years ago, a young man came to see me, and he had a $25 million personal guarantee on a bank debt. He was building a condominium project, and as you know, the real estate market fell apart 5-6 years ago, 7 years ago. Right. And he was in default on the construction loan. He couldn't sell the condos, and the bank was going after him on his personal guarantee. All of a sudden, his uncle passes away. and his uncle leaves him $20 million inheritance. And he comes to see me. He says, "How could I protect this inheritance?" And I said, "Unfortunately, your uncle's will said I leave everything to my nephew outright. It's yours, and there's no way that you can
live
now
money that will be
can't
grabbed.
Transfer it now. The bank's going to take it, and you're out of luck." And that really drives the point home. You just don't know when you pass away. You don't know what situation your heirs are going to be in. They might be in the midst of a divorce. They might be in the midst of a bankruptcy filing. They might be involved in some litigation. And the last thing you want is that hard-earned wealth that you've created
is just going to go gone.
To go to some third party. Exactly. So what people need to do, and what often is done, even if it's not a simplistic will, people say, "Oh, I'd give it to my children when they turn age 30. Or 1/3 at 25, 1/3 at 30, balance at 35. Who's to say that at age 36 you're not going to get divorced, or you're not going to get sued, or something's going to happen in your business, or if you're a professional, you're a doctor, and you're going to get sued for malpractice? You don't know when that's going to happen. So my philosophy is on all of my documents, all my trusts, all my wills, anything I draft is always left for the child's lifetime and beyond, even for the grandchild's lifetime. It stays in trust for them. Now, you might say, well, what if does that mean the child has to go and beg every time they want a distribution out of the trust?
Right.
Not necessarily, because
that?
If the child, you got to balance it, and there are ways to balance it. If the child is a responsible individual, then you let the child have the power to remove the trustee and replace whoever they want as trustee. So they can replace them with their best friend, and their best friend will give them whatever money they want. But if they're smart, they're not going to take the money out of the trust receptacle, because as long as it stays in trust, it's going to be protected from any creditors, divorce, etc.
Mr. Krooks, thank you so much for joining me here on the show.
It's my pleasure, and please call me Bernie.
Bernie, okay. In your presentation, that great presentation you just did, let's jump right in to that delicate moment. And again, many of the listeners out there, people just don't get it. When it comes time, that moment when someone really should have looked into putting their money in a trust, and then they're kind of over the line when they're meeting with the attorney, and the attorney has to break it to them, says, not much I can do about it right now. Maybe we could talk about that. And then that will bring up for the listeners the importance about pre-planning, thinking ahead.
This is one of those things that people don't like to think about. Nobody thinks about what's going to happen to me or my family if I get sick, if I need someone to come into the house to take care of me, if I need a nursing home. People don't spend any time thinking about that, because they'd rather think about, where am I going to go on vacation next week? My car lease is up. I need a new car. I'm going to go shopping, looking at all the different cars. Right. I need a new living room carpet. What color is it going to be? These are pleasant things. These are fun things. That's what people spend time thinking about. Unfortunately, by not thinking about it, they're putting themselves in the very precarious position of potentially losing everything they've worked so hard for their entire lives. Because the truth of the matter is, the United States does not have a system to pay for long-term care. The system we have is you either pay all your money or you go on Medicaid. And it's so difficult to qualify for Medicaid that there really is a premium on doing it in advance and making sure it's done properly. Although it's never too late to plan, I'd like to say, even if you're on the nursing home doorstep, you're in the nursing home, it's never too late. So it's still better to see a professional at that time than to do nothing, but you're clearly much better off doing it in advance.
Now, the concept of a pooled trust. Maybe you can explain it in a simplified way for the audience.
This is a wonderful technique that's available for people in the New York area, where they can transfer certain assets and income into a pooled trust, and those assets and the income that they transfer are protected against the cost of long-term care. So the government is not allowed to count that asset and income in determining whether or not you qualify for Medicaid. So somebody can hypothetically transfer money into a pooled trust, and that trust can pay their rent, it can pay doctor bills, it can pay other things, and they can have access to that money, and it won't disqualify them for government benefits. So it's a wonderful technique.
Now, I mean, this is the obvious question, but this is completely legal, above board. I mean,
not only is it legal, there's a court case saying that this is okay. It has been used by attorneys and other professionals in the elder care arena for several years. So this is tried and true method of protecting assets and income, and there's some wonderful opportunities available for your listeners.
Valerie, thank you for joining me here on Mind Your Business.
Very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I know your time is precious, but I just need to ask you a specific question that I believe is your area of expertise. You have many areas, but maybe you could share with the audience some strategies regarding the Medicaid component and what people face, seniors or people with disabilities. Maybe you could share some perspective on that.
Sure, I'm happy to, and I
Thank
thank you for this opportunity.
Thank
You know, Medicaid has very low income limits for people who are seniors or who have Medicare because they're disabled.
Right.
And the income limit is well below the poverty line. It's only $825 a month for a single person.
It's like impossible,
and
kind of.
it's really impossible. So we look for ways around those tight limits.
Mm-hmm.
And the most popular one is to use a pooled income trust.
Right.
Those have become well known. They're well established now, and the sponsor of this event sponsors one of the many pooled trusts in New York. But those can be cumbersome to use and can be costly for someone who has a hard time managing and needs to hire someone to manage it. So we look for ways of eliminating the spend down, which is the excess income that is put into a trust. So there are a few strategies that have developed because of some changes in the law recently.
Okay.
And one is for people who have disabilities, if they're under age 65, if they can work at all, and I'm saying even an hour a month, they can use the Medicaid buy-in for working people with disabilities. And what that program does is it gives them a slightly higher asset limit, $20,000 instead of about $15,000. If they have retirement funds like an IRA, they are totally exempt. They do not have to start taking distributions.
Okay.
And their income limit is 250% of the poverty line, which comes out to roughly $2,400 a month.
Now, the type of job they could take is like walking someone's dog for an hour a week? Or?
That's right. That's right. They can even do it an hour a month. They could do some filing for a neighbor. They could do filing for a company. They could answer phone calls. They could return phone calls. It needs to be bona fide employment in that the person will give them a check and give them a letter saying this person,
works and answers to me.
Right, but there's no minimum amount.
77 WABC Radio presents Mind Your Business, hosted by founder and president of Bottom Line Marketing Group, Yitzchok Saftlas. Mind Your Business focuses on business and marketing strategies for success.